Welcome to Stations of the Cross 2016, a cooperative venture between Northmead Uniting Church and Northmead Creative and Performing Arts High School, and in a gallery space at the school. Stations of the Cross is a Franciscan spiritual journey initiated about 1200, and its task is to enable people to pray, to walk the journey that Jesus walked from the time in which he was sentenced to death to his death, and we also remember his resurrection within that. In this case, we have seen the Stations of the Cross as being like an existential prayer. How do we live when we know that we're mortal, when we ourselves die? So part of the question is, how did you learn that you're mortal? When did you learn that life doesn't go on forever? And we've seen that as shaping the way artists respond to the Stations of the Cross. We give the artists a pastorally informed commentary as a brief, and each artist is given a particular station and about 9 months to a year to work on that station, and we're not so much interested in illustration of the station as a response in the present to the particular issues raised by that station. So here is the first station. It is Jesus' sentence to death, and the artist is Victoria Peel. And talking about these works, she talked of how she learned that her daughter had a terminal illness, and her daughter was in her 20s, has a terminal illness, and what that meant for her. She created this work that was from a studio in St Albans in the country. There was outside the window this crossroads, and she built that into the shape of a cross. She started drawing in the foreground of this knotted trees, had difficulty getting through all that, to eventually finding the light on this tree at the back and working her way through to there. The interesting thing for me is that when artists are working with crucifixion images, the ones that work best are the ones that reflect resurrection, and Victoria's work reflects resurrection. I find this work, which was on the floor next to that one, and Victoria said this is work she'd done when she first learned about her daughter's illness. She has painted an evening sunset on the water, a big ferry, and she's called it Towards a Safe Harbour. And this one wasn't painted for any particular reason except she wanted to paint it. Her dad had been in the Navy, he had worked on boats for a long while, and there's something in this sunset sort of image that returns her to her family, her dad, to things that are familiar, and becomes a safe harbour when you're facing really tough questions. Station number 2 is Jesus carries his cross, takes up his cross. And I've always thought that taking up your crosses for us is to take up the cross of our mortality. How do we walk this journey of life when we know that we're mortal or finite, or that one day we'll die? This work is painted by Julie Harris, and a few years ago we asked her to be in Stations of the Cross, and she said, I've never painted a Station of the Cross before, so I need to paint the whole 14 as traditional for the Stations of the Cross. So she painted 3 sets of Stations of the Cross, this being one of them. And these works would all be 100 centimetres high by about 70 centimetres wide. And they're part of 3 series that she did, and this particular station in this one becomes here. She's made those big works into a smaller print on this lovely paper, registering them and naming them as the Dark Stations. And this work is again a print from that series and put onto canvas. And it has very subtle movements within it, which give you layer upon layer upon layer. She lived at Currajong Heights when she painted this, and so the Blue Mountains are part of her landscape, and I think there were fires in the mountains around that time. But also the life journey for Julie has had dark stations along the way, and so she's given us this bit, and I find that I love this bit. I love this whole, love to frame it and carry it, because it's how life is. Station number 3 is Jesus falls for the first time. In this mortal journey, what life throws at us is that we fall under the weight of our mortality. In the biblical story, Jesus didn't fall in the journey to the cross, though each of the falls reflects something of the time that he was tempted in the wilderness. Jenny Little's the artist, and she's painted these two faces drawn from earlier artworks. This one is a totally pointillist work made with ink on a draftsman paper, and by pointillist I mean it's made with lots of small tiny dots that she's built up. This one is painted with oil paint and so painted in a quite different way and scratched back, and then when it was pasted on here, the paste moved and made something interesting happen. So she has these two figures looking from the ground, as it were, upwards, because the figure has fallen. And she has placed also this video work, a bit difficult to see it all on here, but the video work is based on some mathematical things that she has about a parabola. And the parabola and what's in it moves down and around and up on here, like so. And she sees that as a mathematical thing that she wants to play with a mathematical formula and the significance of numbers in creating this. And so you have this movement which has a gentle swirling within it. When you fall, there's a swirling, but falls can also be uplifted, so it moves within the whole. And that's station number 3. Station number 4, Jesus meets his mother. For me, there's a sense of Jesus, cross on his shoulder, being taken out to, having been tortured and being taken out to be crucified, and this incredibly poignant moment where he must see his mother in the crowd, and there's a connection. And I think how significant it is when you meet your own mother, your own father, realising that you're mortal and they're mortal, and you see them in a different way. The work is by Ewan McLeod. He's called it The Artist's Mother, and he'd never painted his mother before. He's painted his father a lot within his images, his mother wasn't very keen on him painting her, and I suspect that that's a struggle for all of us, how well our children see us and depict us as we are growing older and they are growing wiser. But in this work, Ewan has his mother walking along a path. He has this incredibly skilled capacity to simplify a figure down and to take away the detail and yet still leave the essence of the figure there. The figure always lives comfortably within the landscape. In this occasion, Ewan has put his own face, not his own face, but put a face in up here. said to me, perhaps I'm trying too hard with that. And down here, though, what's really significant is the artist's shadow stretches out from the side of the painting and becomes one shadow with his mother's shadow. So he finds that in there. I find that this fence line becomes like a row of crosses, stations of the cross, and his mother is striding out. I think in this work he's reflected something of his mother's struggle in life. She was widowed early, and the journey can't always have been easy. But this is a poignant, lovely work, the artist's mother. Station number 5, Simon helps Jesus carry his cross. In the mortal journey of living this life in all its fragility, Simon helps Jesus carry his cross, and as we walk this journey carrying our own crosses, you can't do it alone. You need someone to help you, and I think this image is almost the essence, the beginning of community. We can't live alone. So you have this little work up here to make this sculpture. Orest Kewen, the artist, uses plasticine, fairly expensive style plasticine, one wouldn't give to one's grandchildren. And then from that plasticine makes a mould to create this piece. This particular work has an enormous, wonderful flow, and it's a movement upwards through here. This piece really looks like village. It's just put together out of images from art probably, but not anything particular. The V represents the station 5, and up here this moment of in the movement up the hill towards the cross, Simon is there helping. And then up here on this, at the top of the hill, these 3 crosses. It's almost as though the crucifixion is over a void. There's a lovely mark in here, which is the artist's aesthetic thing, but it also reflects the darkness of the moment, the earthquake, the splitting. It carries much more in it. And a nice movement out here that parallels this one, I think echoes, and maybe echoes the cross as well. It's Orest is obviously a major sculptor, and this is a lovely work. Simon helps Jesus carry his cross. This is station number 6. Veronica wipes Jesus' face. It's not part of the biblical story, but it's from earliest Christian tradition. The artist is Chris Wyatt. He's wonderfully painted this painting on a cardboard box that he's opened out. And the cardboard box, well, he's a poor artist, and this is a surface that he could work on for not much money. But it also had within it that the fragility of the cardboard is a bit like the fragility of the cloth. The story is that Veronica reached out from the crowd with a cloth and she wiped Jesus' face, and Jesus' face was imprinted on the cloth. The work is, I reckon, monumental. It's a hard work painting, but it refers back to artists like Bruegel, a figure being tortured on a wheel. There is another painting of the crucifixion itself up here. There is a deposition, figure being taken down from the cross. these pomegranates here at the bottom. Then I think maybe these are stones from the tomb. There's skulls within this work, a couple of them. There's women weeping at the foot of the cross. There's this consolation image of Judas who's hanged himself. There's a snake here. In above the sense of the resurrection reflected in these empty crosses and the light, the strong lights that's coming behind them. And across the foot of the painting, face to face with just one moment, forever bound. And I think there's, in life, we have these intimate moments that are just fractional when we meet somebody and imprints on us in a way that we remember or are connected with that person forever. Station number 7 is painted by Fan Dong Wang. It's Jesus Falls for the second time, and these falls are in their own way, they're cumulative. As we go on in life, the falls get harder and tougher. Dong Wang was born in Shanghai and lived there. He trained as an artist in Shanghai. When the Tiananmen Square massacre was on, he saw it as time to leave China. He was very interested in the interconnection between Eastern and Western art. So he took an opportunity to leave and he came to Australia. 5 tough years in Australia first, and then he got into a master's program and later a PhD in fine arts. His PhD was about the place of perspective in classical art, and he likes to cut perspective right down, so that the depth of this painting, well, it's painted from above, looking down, and the depth is only 6 inches or a foot of all the work. It's this figure is taken from a Michelangelo work. This bar is part of the cross. These Roman soldiers each have a sort of a plastic toy, part of a toy. In doing his PhD, he had to do some work in sculpture as well. So what he did was find plastic toys, and then he would look at them and make, actually reverse to normal, a bigger mould. And he would make that in wood and use it as an object that he hung on his wall, but then he painted into his paintings. So you have these Roman soldiers with heads that reflect sort of, for him, for Dong Wang, some critique of the dependence upon technology in contemporary society. He wanted in this work to have this gap in here. He wanted it to be a void, and that the void would offer some sort of movement upwards as a way of, I guess, giving life from these falls. So it is a beautifully coloured work, just so sensitive, gentle. He's a very significant artist. Station number 7, Jesus Falls for the second time. Station number 8, Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. I always find a difficult text. Jesus walking along with a cross on his shoulder, as it were, and Simon perhaps helping him, meets the women of Jerusalem. and they're weeping for Jesus, and Jesus looks at them and says, "Don't weep for me, weep for yourselves and your own unborn children." Now, the artist is Peter Gardner, and he's seen this as a delightfully reflective comment, and I would say, listening to what he's done in his painting, he's shaped it as a compassionate. If you are hurting and being taken out to be murdered in the way that Jesus was, how can you look at other people and with compassion for who they are? The artist has painted this image of Jesus where the marks of the thorns and the blood there, but he's used, he said, Neil Armstrong is in this. Neil Armstrong, who was on the moon, and apparently he had a visor, and the visor reflected back Buzz Aldrin, who was also there, and he's taken that as a way of giving Jesus a face but using a visor and reflecting back the women of Jerusalem. So in the midst of his pain, represented yes, by this wonderful crown of thorns, such a wonderful thing, and he's attempted just to give a reflective moment of concern for those who are gathered around him. This is a lovely painting, and the circle is appropriate to what's here. Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. This is station number 9. Jesus falls for the 3rd time, and the falls are cumulative, and I think in life the falls are cumulative. I walked around here the other day with my daughter and said that the falls are bigger and greater as you get older, and she's in her mid-40s, and she said, "Really? Do you believe that?" Yes. It's difficult for me in one way to talk about this work because it's my own work. I'm the artist, and I don't usually put my work in this show, but an artist pulled out in January and there wasn't time to ask somebody else. We try to give artists about 9 months or a year to create a work. Then I realised that actually I'd been working on this for about 10 years, so it's not as though I hadn't thought about it or I didn't have time for it. But I had been working on paintings in my studio for a long while, which were self-portraits. And I was trying to find a form of abstraction in painting faces that might bring something of the mystery that resides beneath the surface of the face out in the painting and might universalise the face. And I was cleaning out paintings and throwing some away or painting over them, and I pulled this one out and thought, it's too good to throw away, but it's not good enough to keep. And it kicked around my studio for a couple of weeks. And this person communicated with me to say they couldn't do it. So I had a problem. But what I did was work intensely for a while and looking around, and suddenly realised that this fall is about life being turned upside down. So I turned a self-portrait upside down, and I took a big graphite marker, pencil, and put a big cross on it. Not a crucifix, but a cross, a mark like a plus sign. And I wanted to depict something of the ways in which life turns us upside down, how we become disoriented, and it's possible to look at this and think about how people who are refugees, for example, might be disoriented by what's happening to them. That's the fall, and the fall for which, using the compassion of Jesus that we've just talked about, we might look for justice in the midst of that. Station number 10, Jesus is stripped. I find in life that particularly as I watched my parents get older, that it's just so strange. Jesus, before he's crucified at the foot of the cross, he's stripped of all his clothes, and I think as my parents got older, in lots of ways their dignity, their being was stripped. And I resonate in a way with this journey of life that's just so hard. The artist here is John Reed, and one of the nice, interesting things about John is he didn't train as an artist, he trained as a biochemist, and he did a PhD in biochemistry, and then says how lucky he is that he did a PhD in biochemistry and not fine art, because he wasn't bound to be drawing and finding out how to get to the surface of things. He was able to play with how things reacted against each other. So how paint reacts when you put it together, how colours merge and change. And so there's a way into abstraction that was different from traditional painting. And you have these lovely colours, lovely blue, the yellow, the green, the orange. You have these that are not literal in any way, they're just working together, and you find nice runny bits in here. But he told me that he didn't normally paint figures, but around this time was painting, when I asked him to participate in the show, he painted 3 figures. And he found that this stripness had a sort of a split part of it. And a bit like Jenny before in her station of Jesus Falls the First Time, where she had a parabola that had the fall as being both down and up in the same movement. John has a sense that when we are stripped, it can either destroy you or it can actually enhance you. And he, in his naming of this, says, this is how I understand God. God is in those moments when, having been stripped, you find your way back and are strengthened. Station number 11, Jesus is nailed to the cross. The artist is Troy Quinlivan, and how we come to our death, I guess, is the question. Troy was studying for an honours degree in fine arts when his brother was killed in a car accident. And he had been painting portraits up until that time, but until he dealt with the death of his brother through his paintings, he couldn't get back to painting portraits. So this work is made up with lots of ash that he's painted into the painting. He struggled as an artist to find the balance between the dark at the top and the light at the bottom. To make the painting, he had one of his friends pose for him and then constructed this painting. The painting I find incredibly powerful, evocative, and is that moment of being nailed to the cross. In the last couple of years, when we've done the Stations of the Cross, the artists who've taken this station, Jesus dies on the cross, have both taken a moment almost of breathlessness when the air has gone out of the landscape, or the air has gone and nothing moves, there's an absolute stillness. Jesus has breathed his last, or death for us is a lack of breath. Gary Foy is the artist here, and his experience of life is a little different. He's had a lot of surgery, particularly relating to his back, and he's lived with lots of pain. So when he comes to this moment and this station, it comes with a fight against death. He looked at the text and read the text, and he took the sense of darkness coming over the land, the sense of a curtain being split in two, as a storm, earthquake, really radical, strong things, and he's built that into the storm, into this painting, and that's in these parts too. And then he's created what down here is perhaps the void, maybe the stillness of breath that the other paintings had, but went out and spent his pocket money, as it were, and a bit more, on some religious trinkets that he should put here. And those trinkets become a sort of a critique of, I guess, piety in religion that Gary might have. His own sense is death is to be fought every inch of the way. You couldn't go to your death without a fight to stay alive. But he sees death perhaps as this void, this big hole, and he's critical of the ways in which religious people can avoid the hole or the death through almost their superstition. It's a challenging image to sit with. And he has a lovely splash of paint here. Should he leave it in or should he leave it out? I'm glad he left it in because it gives life to this painting. This is station number 13. It's a pietà, or the deposition, or Jesus is taken down from the cross. The artist is Greg O'Brien. He lives in New Zealand. He's a poet, a writer and artist. He's given us this lovely, almost complex, Cubist-style painting. Here in the centre is Mary and the figure of Jesus who's been taken down from the cross. And I really can't think in life of anything tougher than to be a mother having watched your son be tortured and then have them killed via crucifixion, and then you hold them. I can't think of any tougher moment in life. Greg has given us, there are so many things in this painting, lots of symbols, but the cross. He's given us references to all of the other stations so that he's seen the moment not just in isolation, but it's actually part of a whole story. There is perhaps here a tree of life waiting to burst into new life. This red sun, moon. There are some volcanoes here. Is it the tip of the South Island of New Zealand looking north and looking towards those volcanic things? Certainly, Greg was talking about the sinking of a ship that was loaded with containers, and the containers being washed ashore progressively over the years, and his fascination with those containers. So he's painted them into here, and lots of the lettering actually relates to the letters that were on the containers. Nice spear perhaps in here. There's a busyness in this part of the work around the Mary and the Jesus, the deposition, and that busyness is probably the busyness that would have been going on in the society at the time that Jesus was crucified, and this poignant moment not recognised by the people around because they're busy about their own things and their own business. So this is Jesus is taken down from the cross. Station number 14, Jesus is laid in the tomb. The artist is Chris Orquette. Chris is a teacher within the school. He's a very gifted artist, and this work reflects a style of art making, arte bravura, a sort of Italian movement using cheap materials. In this case, Chris found 19 of these shaped pieces of metal with this lovely colouring in them. Some have been burned, some have just been rusting away. And he's joined them together with another number of works that he's made. He's created a box. It's a bit like a coffin, or perhaps it's a confessional. And he's just talking a moment ago about being connected with Aboriginality and maybe the styles of dwellings that some people have had, the humpy type thing. He liked their connectedness, the Aboriginal connectedness with the land, and always ongoing. And he's placed on the top of this a lovely piece of dried wood that he's found, which may be the body of Jesus and may be the cross. It's a lovely work. There's a sense of walking around it, of being able to peer inside of it. Something of this lovely rustic colouring, and it has a stillness and a quiet, and I think it has an element of reflecting resurrection, in that if you peered in this on Sunday morning, you would see that there's nothing in there, and it would reflect the resurrection of Jesus, the resurrection that we experience in our own living. Stations of the Franciscan Stations of the Cross have 14 stations, and maybe Eucharist on Easter Sunday was considered the 15th station, or the station that related to resurrection. But we've worked to include a resurrection station because we're not within a church, we're within a community. And this work is by Marilyn Fairskye. It's a video piece that she has called White on White. She had filmed it in Russia, a Russian Orthodox church, and these figures continually painting the wall. And apparently they do this a couple of times a year. In the background is the cathedral, but the cathedral both appears and then just quietly disappears, and your focus comes back to the wall, and then a little bit later the cathedral will come back. The film and the music are on a perpetual loop, because for the artist that loop reflects infinity. And there's something in this work of sitting quietly, being still, reflecting on the life journey that we've had, and being open just to the quiet, the stillness that comes with both the music and the white on white. It's station number 15, Jesus is raised to life. We've included station number 16, Jesus comes to Warman today. Last year, we held the Stations of the Cross exhibition in the Australian Catholic University, and they had some money and enabled us to bring some artworks from Aboriginal artists in Western Australia. One of those was Shirley Purdy from the Warman community in the Kimberley, used to be Turkey Creek, and Shirley had won the Blake Prize, a national prize for religious art. And when we asked her to participate, she had this lovely response: "I will only participate if I can do station number 16, Jesus comes to Warman today." Now that pushed us to rethink some of the stations and into the question of maybe how do we live beyond our death? How is God's presence in the world beyond death? And in the Christian tradition, it's a story that's like Jesus meeting disciples on the Emmaus Road, or the other way around, on the Emmaus Road, disciples meeting Jesus. We have asked Del Walker. Del is a member of the Uniting Church in Northmead. She's studying a PhD in Fine Arts, and she's the one allocated this particular station. So she has done that with this very gentle, soft, rippling canvas. There's no white paint in the canvas. She uses a palette of red, yellow and blue primary colours. She mixes her colours and has then built up this, each thing. The canvas is flat on the floor. She meditates over the top of it. She listens gently, and then she puts the very finest layer of watered colour onto the canvas. She wanted this dark piece in it, and I think the dark piece connects to the dark places in all of the stations. But somewhere there's a subtlety. You can look and see subtlety of the yellow on the edge here and another yellow over here. It is very just soft, subtle, gentle. And Del wanted to say that in her being, she recognises the presence of God in life, not when she's rushing and doing things, but when she's still and slow and meditative and open to glimpsing God in those gentler and quieter moments. And that comes in this painting. Jesus comes to Warman today. That's our Stations of the Cross for 2016. We hope that you have a deep and rich Easter, and that looking at these images might help you in the journey of life. Thanks.